I never expected that one ordinary moment in Buford, Georgia would turn into a story that stretched across the entire country. But that's exactly what happened when I filmed an Amtrak train rolling through town, not knowing that one of the locomotives in that consist would end up connecting two completely different places in my life. At the time, it didn't feel like anything special. It was just another train, another day, another chance to enjoy the sound of steel on rail. But sometimes the smallest details end up telling the biggest stories. The train that day had two locomotives up front, and the one that caught my eye wasn't even the leader. It was the second engine, tucked in behind the first, doing its job quietly and without any attention. That locomotive was Amtrak number 15. Nothing unusual about it. No special paint. No heritage markings. Just a standard P-42 DC, the kind that has pulled long-distance trains across America for decades. I filmed it, admired the consist, and went on with my day. I had no idea that this locomotive was about to travel farther than I ever imagined, and that I would cross paths with it again in a place that couldn't be more different from Georgia. Because Northeast Georgia and Winter Park, Colorado aren't just far apart. They're practically opposites. Buford sits in the humid southeast, surrounded by trees, rolling hills, and warm air. Winter Park sits high in the Rocky Mountains, more than 9,000 feet above sea level, at the highest Amtrak stop in the entire system. The distance between them is about 1,450 miles by road, and roughly 1,200 miles in a straight line. Two places that feel like they belong to two completely different stories. And yet, somehow, one locomotive managed to tie them together. Months after that day in Buford, I found myself in Winter Park, Colorado. The air was thin, the mountains were towering, and the California Zephyr was making its way through some of the most dramatic scenery in the country. I was there to enjoy the view, to watch the train arrive, and to take in the beauty of the Rockies. And as the locomotive came into sight, something about it felt familiar. I zoomed in, looked closer, and there it was, the number on the side, 15. The same locomotive I had filmed months earlier in Georgia. The same engine that had been the second locomotive in a consist rolling through Buford was now leading the California Zephyr through the mountains of Colorado. Later, that moment stopped me in my tracks. What were the odds? How far had this locomotive traveled between those two sightings? And how did it end up in two places that felt like they belonged to two different worlds? That's when I started digging into how Amtrak locomotives move across the country, and the story became even more fascinating. Locomotives like number 15 don't stay on one route forever. They rotate, they move, they get reassigned. And one of the biggest hubs for that movement is Chicago. Chicago is where Amtrak performs major diesel maintenance. It's the crossroads of the long-distance network. Locomotives from the Southeast, the Midwest, and the West all pass through Chicago at some point. So after leaving Georgia, number 15 likely continued along the Crescent route toward Atlanta and New Orleans, or possibly north toward Washington, D.C. Either direction eventually funnels toward Chicago. And once it reached Chicago, it would have been serviced, inspected, and reassigned to a new route. That new route was almost certainly the California Zephyr, one of the most iconic long-distance trains in America. From Chicago, the Zephyr heads west through Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, and into Colorado, climbing into the Rockies and passing through Winter Park. That's where I saw number 15 again, this time leading the train through mountain air instead of trailing quietly through Georgia woods. And after Winter Park, the Zephyr continues across Utah, Nevada, and all the way to California. So yes, it's very likely that this locomotive traveled the entire route from the Southeast to the Midwest, across the plains, through the Rockies, and all the way to the West Coast. When you add it all up, this one locomotive may have traveled nearly 3,000 miles between the two moments I happened to catch it on camera. And that's just the part one can trace. Locomotives like number 15 don't stop when the cameras stop rolling. They keep going. They move from train to train, route to route, state to state. They cross deserts, mountains, forests, and cities. They carry passengers, luggage, stories, and memories. And every once in a while, if you're paying attention, you get a glimpse of just how far they've gone. Most people never notice locomotive numbers. Most people never realize how far these engines roam. It's not very often you get a moment like this, where two completely different places, separated by more than 1,000 miles, get tied together by one wandering locomotive. From a Georgia afternoon where it quietly followed another engine, to the highest passenger stop in America where it led the train through the Rockies, Engine 15 connected two moments in my life that I never expected to be part of the same story. And maybe that's a reminder for all of us. Even when our journeys take us through completely different landscapes, there's purpose in every mile. Even when we feel like we're moving from one extreme to another, there's a plan unfolding that we may not see yet. And sometimes, God has a way of connecting our stories in ways we never expect. Through places, through moments, and yes, even through a single locomotive traveling across the country. From one side of the country to the other, this locomotive carried more than miles. It carried a reminder that God goes before us in every season. And that's the journey.